Welcome back, guys, and let me first show you what we're going to build today. So we'll have this little login screen here. This will all be built in Vue.js, which we're going to use Nuxt to make it a little bit easier for us to use Vue.js. So we'll have this little login form built with Vuetify. Vuetify is a very nice framework, and you can see all these nice little animations that we get and this type of animations. We'll hook this up with Firebase Authentication. So you'll basically be able to log in tutorials at gmail.com just to show an example, and our password, and we can say login, and that will log us into our dashboard. And here we have a protected route basically. So if we log out and we try to go to that route, you'll see it will just take us back to the login screen. The same with any garbage route that we type in, and also it will handle garbage emails and garbage credentials as well. If we have something like this where we have a badly formatted email, if we try to say login, the password is invalid or the user doesn't have a password. Okay, let me just type in a password. There is no user corresponding to this identifier. If we just don't type an email in there at all and say login, it says the email address is badly formatted. So just a very nice example. And if we type the password wrong, it will show this message. And if we type the password correctly, it will log us in. And again, if we log out, if we click on forgot password, if we click on that, it will send us a resend link, and the resend link will look like this. And if we click on that reset link, it will give us the opportunity to change our password. So that's what we will be building today, and I hope you'll find it useful, and let's get started. So guys, now that you know what we're going to build, you'll see that we're just going to build a login screen and basically just integrate that with Firebase Authentication using Vuetify and Nuxt. So let's get started. So first of all, what we want is a Nuxt project, a new Nuxt project. So let's just go to my projects folder, and let's make a directory here for Vue.js. And inside that, we can make a directory for this project. So we're going to call this Nuxt Firebase auth. All right. And we're going to go into there. And then we want to create a new Nuxt app. And that we can just do with npx. Alright guys, now you can see it's asking our project name. I'm just going to say Nuxt Firebase auth. We're just going to use JavaScript, npm, and here we're going to use Vuetify as our framework. Let's just add progressive web app and Axios support here. We'll use Prettier as our linter. We're not going to do any testing now. Single page app, Jamstack hosting, JS config, and none. We're going to use Git for our version control. Alright guys, now you can see we're basically done, and it's giving us an example here, npm run dev to get started. Let's just open that in the code here. We'll also go to projects where I've created this project. And here you can see there's our project. And if we go to the package.json, you will see that there is a script for dev, which will basically just run Nuxt. So let's do that. So again, you can just say npm run dev, and that will run your new Nuxt application. In my case, I'm just going to add a host here, and I've got my own Docker container where this is running on. So, but essentially you can just run npm run dev. You don't have to add this Nuxt here that I'm doing. It's just an alias on my machine. Alright, and as this is deploying, we can open our browser and we can go to localhost 3000. And here you can see a basic Nuxt and Vuetify example here. What we're going to do is we're immediately going to go to our layouts here. And I basically just want to strip out everything that it's using here, because we don't need anything at this point. We don't need this, but let's just take out this navigation drawer and this list, and app bar, we don't need any of this. We can just take all of this away. I think let's just leave this v, let's just leave v content. Let me just see, where's that? There's the app bar, there's main, and there's the Nuxt hook there. So I think we can leave it like that and take all of the other stuff out. So it will look like this, and I think we can just strip all of this away, basically. So let's do that. All right, I think that's all that we have to do. So now if we go back to our application here and we refresh, then we don't have that app bar and any of that anymore. And let's just remove that page as well. So if we go to our index page, pages index, I think let's just remove everything to start with. And basically we don't need this components logo and Vuetify logo. We're going to remove that just for the purposes of this video. And if you go to our components folder here, we can just delete that from there. You can also delete the readme files if you know what it says. All right, so now we've got a default layout and we've got this index page. I'm also going to delete this inspire page, but you can check it out if you want. All right, so now in our template here for our index page, let's just create like a page where a user will land when they're basically logged in, because that's what we want to do. We want users to log in. So we're just going to make like a little div container here, just a flex container. So I'm just going to use some of Vuetify's nice classes that it provides. All right, and then what we can do is we can basically just add like a, let's just call it a header here, and we'll just say logged in dashboard, something like that. You can call it whatever you want. And I think that's all that we need right now. So if we go to our dashboard, you can see there, welcome to your dashboard. You are now logged in. So obviously we're not logged in, but this is the only page we have at the moment. So what we want to do is we want to hook up Firebase, and we want to basically hook up Firebase authentication so that we can route the user to a login screen if they are not logged in. All right, so that's the next step. So let's do that. Let's create the Firebase project quickly, and let's just go to Firebase, and here you can see some of our other projects. I'm just gonna say add project. Let's just call this all right, it's finished, and now let's check it out. There you can see, and what we basically have is we've got a web application. So we have to create a new web application here just to say we're building this in Nuxt. So it's a web application. So let's just say Nuxt, if I can type there, Nuxt Firebase auth app. We can also set up Firebase hosting for the app if we want to host it somewhere, but I'm not going to do that now. And let's just say register app. And we obviously have to add the Firebase SDK, but you can copy this along, but we're not going to add it in this way. Because we're using Nuxt, we're going to add this in a different way. So I'll show you how to do that now. Let's just say continue to the console. Now the first thing you want to do is we want to go to authentication, and we're going to enable authentication by clicking on get started. And then inside here, we're going to enable email and password authentication. If you want to see how phone authentication work, I've done another video on that with Flutter, but it's exactly the same. So let's just enable email and password authentication. I'm going to say enable. You could also do passwordless sign-in, which is very cool. And you basically just get the email link and then you click on that, and it's almost like an OTP. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to use simple email password verification. And then if we go back to users, for now we're just going to add a user via the Firebase console. Obviously, in a real world scenario, you would probably have something like a sign up screen and capture users details and then register the user and create it like that. You could also do that. For this video, we're just going to say add user. We're going to use our code-based tutorials email there, codebasetutorials@gmail.com. And for the password, let's just use open sesame 123. Alright, and as you can see, we've got a little password, our identifier there, which is our email, and our password doesn't show here. So with that, we can continue. Let's just go to project settings. And if you now click on that little web app that we've created before, you'll see this config here. So you can basically just click on that config and copy and paste that. Alright. Obviously, we have to set that up in our application. But first, what we have to do is we have to add Firebase into our Nuxt app. So for that, we're going to go to Firebase Nuxt. And this website, firebase.nuxt.org, is a very useful resource to get started with Nuxt and Firebase. So basically, if you just go to getting started, we're just going to copy what they're doing here. npm install Firebase. So let's do that first. Here, the next thing we want to do is npm install Nuxtjs Firebase. Now, this is this module that we're installing, which will provide us with a lot of cool features and Firebase integration. So let's also install that. Let's just go back to our code. Alright, so now that that's done, we can start with the integration. Let's just go back to the page where they gave us instructions. So we've installed Firebase, we've installed Nuxtjs Firebase, which is a module to help us. And now we have to basically add our Firebase config to our Nuxtjs config file. Alright, so inside of our Nuxt config, you'll see there's obviously already a lot of settings and stuff in here. You can just go all the way down to modules and just past that PWA section, we can just say enter and just basically paste that code in. Obviously, they've got this in their example, so we can just remove the modules part. Alright. Now, obviously, we have to use that config that we got from Firebase. So if we go back to Firebase, we have to just copy and paste that config in there. And that should now be perfect. So that's our settings for this project. And you can see some services. So again, if we go back to Nuxt Firebase, they'll basically have some example code of what goes into that services section. So if we, for instance, go to the auth section here at the side, you can see here that they've got a bunch of settings that you can add inside there. So instead of just saying auth equals true that we did there, we're going to use some of these examples here. So obviously we want auth to be true, but we also want these functions that they have here. So here you can see they've got like an initialize function, and then they've a section here, config, and then they've got a mutation and an action here. So don't worry too much about this if you're not, familiar with how mutations and actions work in Vue.js or in Nuxt. Basically, what this is going to do is this is going to either trigger an action or a mutation if the authentication state has changed. So we actually want that, but you only need one of them. You don't have to use both of them. You only need one of them to actually detect the change. This persistence is basically, there's 3 types of persistence in Firebase auth. So this basically just handles how a user will be logged in. Like for instance, if he closes the tab, will that then destroy his authentication state? Or if he closes the browser, or do you have to explicitly, change it or lock the user out? And that's what we want. We want to explicitly lock the user out. So even if they close the browser, they will stay signed in. So you can see here, there's 3 types of persistence: local, session, and none. Local, I just want to see here which is the one that we want. Session is just for the browser session, which we don't want. Local would be the one that we're looking for, because that will persist even if you close the browser. So we want to go and use this example that they have here. We only need those settings. We don't need all of the other settings. So if we go back here into auth, into services, we can paste that. We don't need this emulator host because we're not using, we're not emulating any of the Firebase services. We can keep this like as it is, but we can just remove this mutation here. I think we only need the action. So let's just remove the mutation. And I think that is all that we really need. We're not going to use any other Firebase services at this stage. So if you've done that correctly, then Firebase is now probably active in our application. Let's just run it. Let's go back to a npm run dev. And in my case, I'm just going to do my alias. And if we go back here and we refresh, it should look exactly the same. Let's go look at the console here. Could not read property dispatch of undefined. Okay, cool. Yeah, so one thing obviously we've set now in this config is we've set the on-state changed action to actually trigger an action in our Vue.js store, and we have not actually defined that action yet. So let's do that now. So on the left hand side, you'll see there's a store folder, and we're just basically going to create the index.js there for our store that we can initialize. And this is going to help us to maintain our state inside of our application. And if we go back to Nuxt Firebase, you'll see that I think they've got a nice example here. Yeah, you can see they've got a very nice example here on how to actually handle that mutation and how to handle the action as well, which is what we're going to do. And also how to handle an old token and all of that. So we're going to copy and paste this exactly, which is what I'm going to do now, and set it up, and then I'll quickly run through the code. All right, guys. So here you can see I've copied their example exactly. So we've got this inside of our actions object here. We've got this on-state action, changed action, which references what we have in our config here, right here. So we've got this on-state changed action, and if we go back to our store, we've got this on-state changed action. And this basically will trigger whenever the state has changed, and we have this auth user that we receive from Firebase. So we basically check if that auth user does not exist, then it means that we're probably not signed in. In that case, we will set our user to null. So if you go down below here, you'll see our initial state. We have this user object, which is just null. And we'll also set that to null if the user we get from Firebase is null. And then we also want to redirect our user. In our case, I'm using this.router.push to redirect the user to a path, which would just be something like auth/signin. You can do, take the user anywhere you want. But in our case, we're just going to take them to the sign-in page if they're not signed in. And if they are signed in, which means we do have an actual user that Firebase passed through, then we'll grab the UID and the email from that auth user object from Firebase. So that's basically what this is. It's basically just extracting that. And then we use that to actually set our user object, which references this mutation that we have here. And then we also have a little getter here to get our user if we ever need to. And that will just return the user. And that's basically our entire store. That is how you can set it up. And again, all of these snippets here is basically exactly the same as they have on their example, except for this routing part that we're doing here. So what we then have to do is we have to obviously also create this route. So let's do that quickly. So if we go to pages, we can just create a new directory called auth, And I like to keep all of my auth stuff inside of a different directory. And here we can have like a sign in .view. And I think we'll also probably have a sign out .view. So inside here, inside of the sign out view, we'll tackle that later. Let's do the sign. Let's just put a basic template here just to see, you know, if this gets triggered. Then obviously this auth state will only trigger if we actually log in or not. However, we kind of, if we're not logged in, we kind of still want to manage that on our side, because we might not necessarily be logged in. For instance, for the first time a user, you know, goes to our application, they won't be logged in. Auth state won't be triggered necessarily. And we want to kind of redirect the user where we want them to be. And we'll do that using middleware, which is a very nice way to, you know, redirect and manage users in your app. So if we go to middleware here, we can just create like a, let's call it a auth.js. All right. So I hope this makes sense. And again, this middleware will basically trigger before the page loads. However, for that to work, we need to actually register our middleware in our config. So this means that the router will run this auth script every time before a page loads. Let's go back to our application. I can see here it's still running. Let's see if it's actually doing anything now. Aha, and there you can see it's taking us to the sign-in page. So if you try to go to the you know, the dashboard or the, you know, the index page like that, it will just redirect us to the sign-in page. And if we try to go anywhere else like that, it again will just take us to the sign-in page. And if we're on the sign-in page, it will just leave us there if we're not signed in. But if we are signed in, it will take us to the index page, to our protected route. So obviously now that we have that, now we actually want a sign-in page. So I'm gonna quickly build a sign-in page here. I think let me quickly build that and then I'll explain what I've built, because currently we just have this. Alright guys, so let me show you basically what I've created here. So I've basically, as I said, I've created a card, a Vuetify card, and I've just copied and pasted one of their examples. So that's why it's got all of these little things in here. You'll see I have this V model here, and it says auth email and auth password. So that just references the little auth object I have here in our data function here. So I've got this auth object to basically just store the email and password of that user. Again, there's a lot of better ways you can do this, but this works perfectly fine. And then we've just got basically a V card. We've got a row and a column, and we're just centering that card inside of the row and the column. We've got a little button there. For the purposes of this tutorial, what I want to do is, let's make this card yellow. So let's just say color equals yellow, just to match our theme that we have. Oh no, that looks horrible. I think we have to put a dark text onto the colors. So I wonder if we can do, this is so unnecessary, but let me just, in our default layout here, we've set this theme to dark. Let's just set it to light and see what happens. Nothing really. I think that's because in our Nuxt config, we also have a theme setting here, and you can say dark true. We can just say dark false. And see if that changes anything. Oh, that looks better. So there we go. And then let's just take that green color off the sign in. We can just remove this green. All right, and then so we basically have a V form here with 2 text fields. The model, as I explained now, is hooked up to that auth object that we have. And we obviously also have some actions. We've got a login action, which will basically, if you click on it, trigger the login method. And that's why I've created that below. It's currently empty. And then we've got this little forgot password button with, if you click on that, it's got a little forgot password. But for now, we basically have a login screen. And so what we want to do is, we obviously have that user that we created on Firebase. And we just want to log in with that user. So we basically want to do code base tutorials, and the password is open sesame 1234. But obviously it's not going to do anything right now. So let's quickly do that sign in method here. So basically what we want to do there is we want to log in with Firebase with this fire auth function that we just, this fire auth module that we have. So we want to make use of that fire auth instance. So let's do that. So I'm gonna say this dot fire. I just want to make sure, what did we use on the middleware? We said fire.auth. Okay, cool. So we're gonna do exactly that. So in our sign in, we can just say this dot fire.auth. And now we want to use Firebase's actual sign in with email and password credentials method. So if you go to Firebase directly, Firebase auth docs, you can just on the left hand side here click on web, and there you'll see there's a nice example here of password authentication. And here you can see there's an example of how to create a user with email and password. As I said previously, you can do that. We've just created it via the console. And here you can see there's a nice little function here to say firebase.auth.sign in with email and password, and we pass it the email and password through. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use that. We're going to say sign in with email and password, and obviously for the email, we're going to use this.auth.email, and for the password, we're going to say this.auth.password. All right. And basically that's all we have to do. So we can then just basically catch any errors on this. So we can say .catch, and then we can just handle any errors that we might have. So let's just do something like this. And if we have an error, we can just say this.snackbar, which I've defined at the top. So you'll see I have this little snackbar here, this property. So I can just say this.snackbar, and let's just do something like this. Let that equals this, just so that we don't get too nested inside of here. So then we can say that.snackbar text would then equals to error.message, because Firebase's error objects actually has a message and also a code, I think. So the message is the one that we want, and then we want to show the snack bar. And the snack bar is just here at the top. You'll see we've got this little snack bar with a timeout of 4000. So, and obviously it's using the model snack bar, and there's the snack bar text. So it's just false at the moment. So it's just a little nice to have. And then we can say, okay, but if it is successful, so then, so we always do a catch first, just to, just out of principle. But then if it is successful, we'll actually get the user object from Firebase. And that user object can either be null or it can be an actual user object. But if we get this, it means that there's been an auth change in our application. So then we can just redirect, because we have that whole auth change function here in our store, which actually detects if a user is signed in, and making sure that that is the case. Otherwise, the user will get redirected by our middleware. So because we have that, in this case, we can just say, okay, well, that means the user's logged in. Let's route them to the logged in page, to the protected route. And if for whatever reason the user is not logged in, then our middleware will handle that, and it will again redirect the user just to the sign in page. So let's just do a router.push, and we'll just push the user to the dashboard. Then again, for the I think let's just see if that works first. I just want to do that correctly. Obviously it's built successfully, so let's go back here. So again, if we refresh here, we see the same screen, but now codebase tutorials @gmail.com. Let's first type in a garbage password, and if we say login now, we should see the little snack bar with a message from Firebase. And there you can see the password is invalid, or the user does not have a password. And that message is actually coming from Firebase. Okay. And if we type in the correct password, which is open sesame 1 2 3 4, and if we look at the console, let's see what happened here. So we actually logged in. We get the object. We get a user object from Firebase. So we are logged in. We're just not routing. So we're just not redirecting for some reason. Let's just see. I think this might have to do with something in our middleware. Alright guys, so I've picked up what the error was. So in my code, if you go to my middleware, that auth.js file, I had a little mistake here. It just said if not app.fire.current user, and that won't work because we have to reference the auth instance. So now this sign in part is actually working, and it's signing us in. So if we actually go to auth and then sign in manually, it should just redirect us to our dashboard. There you can see, because we're logged in. But now currently we don't have any way to sign out. So let's fix that. So I've created this auth sign out page here, obviously. So what we want to do is, I think just here in the async data part of this page, that will be the first method that loads. We just want to do something like and again we can probably just do this dot fire dot auth dot sign out, which is again a Firebase function. So that should work. So if we go to this root, which is /auth/sign out, no, sorry, whoa. What's that root's name? Sign out. Okay, cool. Let's just go back. auth/sign out. It should sign us out. And cannot read property fire of undefined. I think this should just be fire.auth.sign out, because this would reference that page. Let's just refresh this. Fire is not defined. Let's do nuxt.fire.auth.sign out. Yeah, that's what you want. Okay, cool. So that works. And now the last part is just this little forget password function, which is very easy. So let's just go back to that login page, that signed in page, that protected route, our index basically. Let me just go there. There we go. Let's maybe just add a little button here. Just say v button. Is that not a thing? Okay, let's just try it and see what happens. And then we just make a little thing here that says logout, just so that it's easier for a user. And we do a little @click trigger here. And we can basically just inside of here do the router.push and something like this, which is be auth sign out. Let's see if that works. And let's just log in again. Right, there we are, we logged in. I don't know if the V buttons actually work, but now if we click on that, it actually takes us out. So yeah, there you can see unknown custom element V button. Let's just see, for interest's sake, what are these buttons called? Oh, VBTN, so that's the correct one. Okay, so let's just do this VBTN. Okay, and again log in, and once we're logged in, we can then just log out again. And if you want access to, you know, your email or whatever that is inside of here, you can just do something like you are now logged in, and then we can reference the logged in user by just saying fire, or I think in our case we have to say nuxt.fire.auth.current user. Let's say email. And there you can see you're now logged in with our email. And if you want to store additional details, you can use Firestore database to do that. You can have like a sign up page or a profile section where you can store or ask a user for additional details with a little form. You can save that in Firestore. But now this works. And then the last part is just this forgot password section. So we can quickly build that for if a user forgot their password, then they have a way to actually retrieve that. So in our code, if we go to our sign in screen, we have this little forgot password method, which we hooked up to that button right there. And again, we can just use the default code that we get from Firebase. If we go to their documentation here, so, and then again, let's just change our snack bar here. I don't like this success color. Let's just leave it as a normal snack bar. And I don't want the snack bar to be outlined. So let's remove that. All right, so now we have a complete application with forgot password also. So let's just add our email here. Let's add a garbage email and say forgot password. And there you can see the email is badly formatted. If we actually type in like a proper email, but we call it something else at the end here, there is no user record corresponding to this identifier. The user may have been deleted. So that's a very nice message from Firebase. And again, if we use the actual email and say forgot password, it says cannot read property of undefined. Let's just fix that. So it means it actually worked. This part actually didn't work because we're too nested that it didn't find this property. So let's just do that again. Codebase tutorials@gmail.com. If we say forgot password, recent link sent to codebasetutorials.com. If we go to Gmail, just click on refresh here. There you can see 0 minutes ago, we got this reset link. If we click on that, it gives us a nice little place to reset our password. Save. You can now sign in with your new password. Login. Yeah, it worked. Okay, cool. So there you can see sign in working, sign out working, forgot password also working, and it's working pretty well. So yeah, it's obviously a very basic example, and there's a lot of better ways you can do this, but this is just to get you started. So I hope you guys found this useful, and please let me know, what else you would like to see me doing, and also like and subscribe if you like these videos. Thanks guys. Goodbye.